So in this episode, we're diving into some of the most fascinating Wuthering Heights theories. From the scholarly to the strange. From the classic to the taboo. And even a few that are downright unhinged. And somewhere inside all of that, we'll answer the question I promised in the last episode. We talked about all the modern characters shaped by Heathcliff's shadow. Damon Salvatore, Mr. Rochester, Dracula. But now we're going the opposite direction. Not who he inspired, but who inspired Emily Brontë when she created someone as feral, magnetic, and unsettling as Heathcliff. Because honestly, where did he come from? There are a handful of possibilities, and we'll get there. But first, you need to see just how many different ways readers interpret Wuthering Heights. All the theories, the readings, the symbolism, and the dark, twisted meanings people have found in this story for over 175 years. And hopefully by the end, you'll hear at least one theory that changes how you see Heathcliff and Catherine forever. Let's start with the unreliable narrator theory. Wuthering Heights isn't just a story. It's a story told through two layers of distortion. There's Mr. Lockwood, who has absolutely no idea what's going on. And then there's Nelly Dean, who knows everything. A 20-year history of what went down. But as our main source of narration, she has the ability to edit every detail to her liking. This theory argues the novel we read isn't the truth. It's Nelly's version of the truth. And notice how convenient that is. She's making choices and decisions that are pivotal to how things play out. She's present for every major conflict. She inserts herself into every relationship. She repeats conversations no one else has heard. She positions herself as the moral center. While feeding Lockwood a Gothic melodrama, she seems to enjoy retelling. It's like a story inside a story, filtered through memory, guilt, self-interest, and bias. She even admits at one point that she didn't like Catherine. According to this theory, Heathcliff might not be as monstrous as Nelly paints him. And Catherine might not be as unstable as Nelly insists. And some readers, including myself, take this even further, but we'll get to that later. Next, Heathcliff is Emily Bronte's alter ego. Heathcliff and Catherine famously claim they're the same soul, but some scholars argue there's a deeper truth Emily never stated outright. Heathcliff and Catherine are Emily, two halves of the world inside her. Emily Brontë resisted every Victorian expectation placed on women. She preferred storms to salons, solitude to society, and imagination to propriety. Heathcliff embodies all those forces with terrifying purity. He isn't just her alter ego, he's her shadow self, unrestrained, the part of her that refuses to be tamed. Is this theory unsettling, or does it make sense? Next theory, the Earnshaw illegitimate child theory. Now here's where things get messy. This theory proposes that Mr. Earnshaw didn't adopt Heathcliff out of charity. He brought home his own biological son. Here's the evidence people point to. Mr. Earnshaw's instant favoritism. Hindley's explosive jealousy. Catherine treating Heathcliff not as a foundling, but as part of herself. And Heathcliff's obsessive need to reclaim Wuthering Heights, as if it were rightfully his. But the darkest implication is this. If Heathcliff is an Earnshaw, then the love between Catherine and Heathcliff becomes not just obsessive, but taboo. Suddenly, their destructive, forbidden, impossible attachment takes on a new layer of torment. It's not confirmed, but it's one of the most chilling readings of the novel. Next, Heathcliff as the real ghost or something worse. The novel famously begins with a ghost at the window, but some readers believe the other ghost is the one walking around, Heathcliff himself. Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange seem to exist in a vacuum. We're trapped in a novel with a very small setting. That alone gives us the horror kind of vibe. And then Heathcliff disappears for years, returns transformed, and seems to operate by supernatural logic. He barely ages. He survives violence. It feels like he exerts a spell over the households. People fear him more like a haunting than a man. He outlives most of the other characters of his generation. And Catherine is also delirious and raving at one point. Could some of those passionate moments, when she's ill, be tied to this? Was it Heathcliff or his ghost in that passionate embrace? And we know Mr. Lockwood can see ghosts. Like we said, the novel famously begins with a ghost at the window, Catherine's ghost. Some have suggested that Heathcliff's end may have been self-willed, even occurring earlier in the novel. And in Gothic folklore, a person who dies by their own hand is condemned to remain on Earth, a cursed spirit, unable to cross over. And at the end, Heathcliff's death is ambiguous. And maybe that is when he finally crosses over. Some readers even compared him to a vampire, not in the blood-drinking sense, but in the older, Gothic sense of a malevolent presence draining the life of a home. In this interpretation, Heathcliff isn't a man at all. He is grief incarnate, a wound made flesh. Alright, next theory. Eternal recurrence. Wuthering Heights is built on circles. The first generation destroys itself. The second generation repairs what was shattered. The wounds repeat until someone finally refuses to pass them on. This theory argues the novel is a cycle of karmic repetition or spiritual recurrence. Catherine and Heathcliff's chaos echoes into the lives of their children, until Hareton and young Cathy choose compassion instead of vengeance. It seems like a very early depiction of healing generational trauma. In that sense, the novel is almost hopeful. Love eventually heals what obsession destroyed. Next, let's touch on some feminist, Marxist, and pagan readings of the text. Feminist. Catherine is trapped between two versions of Victorian masculinity. Edgar, he's the safe choice, tied to wealth and property. Heathcliff, he's the wild choice, tied to bodily freedom and desire. Her death is the death of agency. Others have argued that the forbidden romance can be read from a queer lens, and the romance holds homosexual undertones, transcending societal norms. Marxist. Heathcliff is class disruption incarnate. An outsider who rises through power, manipulation, and self-invention, not birthright. His ascent mirrors Victorian anxieties about social mobility and capitalism. The pagan or elemental theory. Some readers see Catherine and Heathcliff as elemental forces, not Christian, not moral, not human. Wind and earth, storm and soil, bound to the moors like ancient spirits. Their love isn't romantic, it's cosmic. The outsider archetype, and the infamous 2026 film debate. This is one of literature's oldest characters, the foreign outsider with ambiguous origins and a story shaped by exclusion. Emily describes Heathcliff with racialized language, but inconsistently, forcing readers into the same trap the characters fall into, projecting fear, prejudice, fascination, and desire onto him. This archetype is so culturally charged that the 2026 adaptation ignited debate on the casting before the trailer even released. Heathcliff still makes people uncomfortable, exactly as Emily intended. And before we finally get to who inspired Heathcliff, my next episode is going to solely cover my own expansion of a theory. Was Nelly Dean the true villain? And is she personally responsible for 2 of the characters' deaths in the novel? Make sure you're subscribed, as you don't want to miss that one. Now let's finally talk about Heathcliff's origins. For a character this vivid, you'd expect Emily to leave us a clear blueprint, but she didn't. We don't know of any confirmed romantic relationship in Emily's own life. In truth, we know so little of this brilliant woman. All we have are fragments, clues, contradictions, and an entire paper trail that was destroyed. It's believed the manuscript for Wuthering Heights was burned, along with her letters and other pieces of writing. It's been suggested it might have been done by one of her sisters. Unfortunately, this was a common practice in that time period. There's so little left of Emily's personal life that it's very difficult to piece together who she was and how this story crafted itself into being. But scholars and fans have some leading influences. First, Lord Byron and the Byronic hero. This is the most widely accepted influence. The poet Byron introduced a new kind of literary man. Brooding, solitary, magnetic, destructive, ruled by a secret past, irresistible, but dangerous. Heathcliff isn't just similar to this archetype, he perfects it. 2. Gothic fiction and Emily's secret world. Emily devoured Gothic novels filled with mysterious strangers, tormented lovers, exiled princes, men who vanished and returned transformed. But Emily didn't just read dark fiction, she wrote it long before Wuthering Heights. In her childhood, she and her sister Anne created Gondel, an enormous, invented world. Many Gondel characters feel like early prototypes of Heathcliff. Rough drafts for the one-day Muse. 3. Branwell Brontë. Many believe that Emily modeled parts of Heathcliff on her brother Branwell. He was brilliant, volatile, self-destructive. A man consumed by ambition, longing, and addiction, who sadly passed away just before Emily. Branwell battled alcoholism and opium dependence. He even had a love affair with a married woman. He was troubled in the way many of our classic Byronic heroes are, and his spirals into chaos left emotional earthquakes in the Brontë household. There's no proof Emily consciously based Heathcliff on him, but the emotional parallels are impossible to ignore. Heathcliff's intensity, his destructive devotion, his restless rage, they echo the turbulence she lived with daily. 4. The outsider as a symbol and the pain Emily never documented. This theory personally rings the truest for me. Heathcliff isn't inspired by a person. He is the embodiment of everything Emily loved, feared, resisted, and endured. Wildness, loneliness, longing, rage, the mores, the refusal to conform, the violence inside her invented worlds, and storms that feel deeply internal. And I'm saying something here that's rarely brought up in Brontë scholarship. I think Emily experienced something deeply painful. After all, abuse is central to her novel. Something painful, something that left no documentation, no paper trail, no diary entry, nothing she would have shared in a Victorian world that silenced women's suffering. Think about your own life, the worst thing that ever happened to you. How many people know? How much of it is written down? Would you intentionally save reminders of that darkness? Most pain leaves almost no record, except in the art we create. That's where I think Emily's darkness appears, not in letters or journals, but in the emotional violence and rawness of Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff isn't a man. He's a storm she carried inside of her. So who inspired Heathcliff? Maybe a poet, maybe a brother, a father, maybe a Gothic tradition. But the answer that feels truest in this? Emily Brontë herself, in the wild, ungoverned world she held inside. Let me know in the comments below which theory was your favorite, which you agree with or disagree with the most. Check out our last episode on Heathcliff's legacy and all the characters he's inspired. And next time we're exploring my own theory, an expansion on Nelly Dean, the Unreliable Narrator, but it gets much, much darker. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.